women ages 25 to 35 start to realize that feminism lied to them. Whenever we talk about a woman and her biological clock, and her fertility, the wall, people have their own opinions on where these phases are, the age ranges, what stage of her life that she's at. Some people place the epiphany phase late 20s or early 30s. Some people think the woman hits the wall at 25. Some say 30. Some say 35. 40. It all depends on whatever the person's perspective is. But and also the region too of where someone lives, because a woman in a certain country, she might age differently than a woman in America, based on the culture and what's the general thing at a certain age. So, for example, a woman here in America, she might be 18 in college, partying, drinking, whatever. But an 18-year-old woman in a different country with a different culture, she might be doing something different or have different beliefs. So the timeline is affected a little bit differently. Based on what I've seen, I mean, it depends too. I mean, you could break this down in terms of like the general biological sense of what a woman's like prime is and her epiphany phase, the wall. You could just take female in general, regardless of country, but country does come into play based on the culture and what a woman is predisposed to believing. I've done content on a woman and her biological clock, her prime years, epiphany phase, the wall, and all of that. I was born in San Diego, California. It's where I am currently right now. And so San Diego, California, America, from my personal experiences with women and just what I've experienced and what I've noticed, I'm going to say that the prime years, and I've mentioned before in content, is 18 to 22. For the sake of legality too, because a woman is going to have her period way earlier than 18. But for the sake of legality and talking about this on YouTube, prime years, I'm going to say 18 to 22. I'm going to say that like there's a denial phase at like 23 and 24 of the decline, like her denying that she's actually on the decline at that point. And I'm going to put the epiphany phase 25 to 29, somewhere in that range, with the wall being 30. Now we can debate what that is in terms of the wall. I mean, you could say it's as early as 25. You could say it's 23. You could say it's 22. I don't know. It depends on how you're viewing it in terms of the stage of her getting her period versus able to have kids, her peak fertility, her peak youth, versus the losing eggs or fertility declining. So it really just depends on what your opinion is of that. But a woman is going to realize at a certain point that the feminine and feminist narrative lied to her. And what I mean by that is the idea of you don't need a man, you can do whatever, party, drink, drugs, alcohol, tattoos, piercings, focus on your career. And those aren't necessarily wrong things if she chooses to do that. But there's ramifications to anybody's decisions, whether they're man or woman. The problem, though, is that we evaluate each other a little bit differently. So the man he's going to be seen as what he can do, what he can provide. So the man is going to ascend with age. At 18 years old, high school graduation, he doesn't really have anything going on. He's living with his parents. They're paying for stuff. So yeah, like he could I guess hook up with a high school classmate of his, or goes to college, a college classmate. But in the grand scheme of things, he's with a girl his age. It's just very temporal. It's just, there's not really a lot of depth there. So the man at 28, for example, is going to be 10 years more mature than 18. He might have a job or a business. He's more physically mature. He understands what turns a woman on a little bit better. He's more knowledgeable and cerebral about females and female nature. And so the man is going to have that ascension with age, where the woman, she just is. So she's going to have her fertility in her youth, and there's going to be a decline to that. And so it doesn't mean decline in terms of human value or spiritual worth, and it doesn't mean the man on the other end in terms of increasing human value or increasing spiritual worth. But intersexual dynamics, that's how it's going to play out. So when the woman's been hearing from an early age, oh, there's this billboard, there's this model, you should look like her, wear this makeup. Oh, you don't need a man, you can party, go to high school 14 to 18, college 18 to 22, focus on your career, you got time. There's going to be this alpha male waiting for you at 35. And then she hits 35 and realizes, oh, she's like at that the end, like the fourth quarter, 5 seconds remaining in the game, for kids or locking down a long-term partner or whatever the case may be. So she's 35 and then now realizes it. And so I put 25 to 35 as the general age range where the woman starts to wake up to these concepts and realizes the feminist narrative was a complete lie. And it may have caused negative ramifications for her going forward. Believing the party narrative, the hookup culture, the drugs, the alcohol, the tattoos, piercings, whatever. And those are fine. Those are things that she has the choice to do. And it's not to say that if she's 35 and has had a bunch of sexual partners that it makes her somehow lower than another woman. But now when you're involving the guy, like she's going to the guy for whether it's the casual hookup or the long-term relationship or the kids, from the guy's perspective, it's kind of like, okay, well, if he's been seen as like, oh, what are you relative to other men, or what can you provide, he might have been a high school graduate at 18, and gets an entry-level job, minimum wage, or goes to college. His parents have to help him pay through college, and he's in a dorm. So she doesn't know at that point that he's her best option, right? So she has the world open to her. She's an 18-year-old girl, right? And he's just an 18-year-old guy competing with other guys that are his age and also older. So like, what does he offer? But say 10 years later, fast forward, now he's 28 and she's sort of on that decline of fertility and waking up to the feminist narrative. What does he just owe her now? It's not to say that she's lower because she's had a bunch of sexual partners or whatever her past may be. But what does he just owe her now? He's not even at his peak SMV, peak sexual market value. For a guy, that's going to be around 35 to 45, where he still maintains some youth, but he's also built up his finances. He's a little more independent. He's grown physically. He's matured. He understands women better. It's a little bit more attractive if he has a business with residual income with time freedom than if he's an 18-year-old kid eating ramen in a college dorm. So the man has that ascension process where the woman just is and kind of goes down from there. So, like I said, keeping with adulthood and legality, 18 to 22 being the woman's prime years, ironically, that being college. So like in this culture specifically, a lot of times it's like, oh, like that's your party years, get it out of your system, or just you got time, focus on your school, focus on your education, focus on you, girl, do your thing. So like the years that she is most likely to lock down her best future, you're telling her that that's like this independent time, right? So she has all these options and she's like, oh, do whatever, focus on my career, multiple guys, whatever the case may be, and then I'll figure the rest out later. So if a man wakes up to these life concepts versus a woman waking up, say they're both 30, if they both wake up, whatever waking up means to you, the man at 30, he's not even hit his prime yet, where the woman, she's already hit the wall. So unfortunately for women, this can cause very negative effects going forward, because she's come to this realization now that this was a huge lie, that I can just do whatever, and then at 35, I'm going to be guaranteed this awesome future, because there is that biological clock. She can't have kids forever. So in a woman's mind, she's thinking, ideally, she wants her kids before 35. That's how most women are going to view that, because in terms of birth defects and having the healthiest possible offspring, she's going to want, if she doesn't want kids, she's going to want that before 35, ideally. But yeah, so if she's gonna have this age range where she has to have that kid at a certain time, or lock down, even if she doesn't want kids, like lock down the high value guy at a certain time before she gets too old or gets wrinkles or whatever the case may be, she starts to notice as she gets older, okay, the younger girls are starting to get all this attention, I need to really figure stuff out for myself going forward. And so I generally notice in this age range of 25 to 35 is when she starts to realize this. Like I said, 18 to 22 being those prime years, which is ironic because those are geared to her of like, oh yeah, use this birth control, just party, join a sorority, focus on your career, do you've got time. So like 18 to 22 is gonna be her prime years. 23 and 24, she's kind of hitting the decline, but she's in denial of it because she's still like in the first half of her 20s. And then at some point from 25 to 35, depending on her personal track in her life, she's gonna have this moment of epiphany. And I say the epiphany phase is 25 to 29. There's other content creators and just people in general that believe the epiphany phase is late 20s or early 30s or mid 30s or even 40s. It depends on what your perspective of that is, but I'm just gonna say for the purpose of this video that women generally start to realize that feminism lied to them between the ages of 25 to 35. And so this starts to, you'll see women like when they're in their late teens, early 20s, they have this like youthful shine, this perkiness, this glow, this happiness, and you see this decline over time for various reasons, you know, responsibilities, life, getting older, but a lot of times it's like realizing what it really means to be a woman and realizing all the misinformation and realizing that things may not be what they were told. So in a different culture that maybe puts more emphasis on family and growing food and just living off the land, being a little bit more spiritual, there might be a culture that they have their kids in their teen years or their early 20s. So a woman's establishing a family at this young age. Whereas here, it's in America, it's like college and hook up and party and then career or whatever the case may be. But biologically, just because this woman's born in America, that doesn't mean that she's gonna party until 35 and then there's gonna be no ramifications at 35. Like, had she been more serious about a long-term future at 20, she might have had a better future going forward than, oh, like realizing at 35, oh, this was all wrong, or I need a change now, right? Like, oh, now I'm looking for the guy, now I'm looking for the provider, now I'm looking for long-term. But the guy, he might just now be owning a company. So like, what is he supposed to just like get like overlooked at like 18 and then at 35 he owns something, or he's like making residual income, he's on his own path, he's hitting his peak or not even close to being there yet, now he owes something? And so this throws off the timeline between men and women. I mean, ideally, if you took like an Adam and Eve sense, not necessarily religiously, but just the whole guy and girl ideal situation, like they're both 18, they graduate high school, maybe they were high school sweethearts or whatever. She gives her youth to him, and he takes care of her as he's coming up in the world, and she gives her youth to him while he's trying to make it. And then as he makes it in his mid to late 20s or early 30s, and he starts to become someone, and she's on the decline, now he gives himself to her and takes care of her for the rest of her life while she's aging, and they have kids and all that. So ideally, that's kind of how things would play out, but you know, there's different things that go on, and people can make their own choices, and it's not a judgment on people. Like if someone wants to be celibate their whole life, or if they want to have a bunch of sexual partners, and then you have swingers and hookup culture and different ranges of sexuality, however someone identifies, you know, to each their own. But in terms of like a man and woman sense, women tend to realize their own biology a little bit more and what it means to be a woman. I'm gonna say from ages 25 to 35 in terms of what I've noticed. Here as a man that's 26 years old myself in San Diego, California, growing up in the United States of America. So I generally notice that that's the age range that they start to notice that feminism was a lie, 25 to 35. I tend to notice that late teens to early 20s is that prime, and that can vary too, because in California the age of consent is 18. There's some states where it's 16, some states where it's 17. So I'll just say from the age of consent of whatever your state is, that age to like college senior, like 22, that's going to be like the prime years. She's going to be a little bit in denial, 23 and 24, and then at some point from 25 to 35 it's going to hit her that feminism lied, and her biological track, there's information about that wasn't necessarily taught, which is unfortunate because she could have done better otherwise.